3 levels of wisdom. How God profoundly trains you to perceive the world through his divine perspective. I once believed that wisdom simply meant possessing all the right answers, knowing precisely which scripture to quote at the opportune moment, or making the faultless decision when life inevitably became challenging. However, God subsequently guided me through seasons where no human answer could possibly mend a situation. These were times when I earnestly prayed for clarity, yet received only a profound silence in return. Moments when what initially appeared to be entirely wrong, paradoxically transformed into the very catalyst that changed me most deeply. It was then I began to grasp that true wisdom isn't about having everything neatly figured out. It's about diligently learning to view the world from God's eternal vantage point. One could attend church their entire life, diligently read every verse on wisdom, and still entirely miss the profound lessons God is truly endeavoring to impart. This is because divine wisdom isn't bestowed all at once in a single flash of insight. Instead, God unveils it progressively, little by little, through various life experiences, through disappointments that challenge our expectations, through misunderstandings that test our patience, and through those quiet moments when we felt he was distant, yet he was, in fact, meticulously training our spiritual sight. There eventually comes a pivotal point when you begin to discern this intricate pattern, how God masterfully uses confusion to cultivate keen discernment within us, and how he allows silence to mature and deepen our hearts. Wisdom, unlike human knowledge, rarely shouts. Instead, it gently whispers. It emerges quietly, manifest in the compassionate way you begin to see people, in the measured and grace-filled way you respond to pain, and in the profound shift where you start to trust his perfect timing over your own hurried inclinations. Today, we will embark on this shared journey, exploring precisely how God meticulously trains his children to grow in this invaluable wisdom, one lesson, one season, and one opened eye at a time. Part 1. Human Wisdom, Seeing Through Logic. I once placed my complete trust in whatever appeared most logical and sensible on paper. If the financial figures aligned perfectly, if the strategic plan seemed undeniably efficient, or if the advice originated from individuals with a wealth of proven experience, I felt a strong sense of security and confidence. This foundational reliance on tangible reasoning is where the majority of us naturally begin our journey. We instinctively lean on established memory patterns and replicate what has demonstrably worked for us in the past. Human wisdom is, by no means, inherently evil. In fact, it is a precious gift bestowed upon us by God. It actively assists us in organizing our daily lives, helps us skillfully avoid obvious pitfalls and mistakes, and empowers us to diligently care for our families and communities. Yet, despite its utility, human wisdom inherently possesses discernible limitations and sharp edges. It possesses the capacity to meticulously calculate the financial cost of a decision, yet it can tragically miss the immeasurable worth of a single soul. It can effectively solve a pressing problem, yet simultaneously allow a heart to harden in the process. It can keep us exceptionally busy and productive, yet tragically keep us blind to deeper truths. This recurring pattern is evident throughout Scripture. Consider the young king who inherits a robust and prosperous nation. His seasoned counselors wisely advise him to govern his people with kindness and thoughtful service. However, his peers, driven by pride, urge him to forcefully assert and prove his strength. He tragically chooses to heed the louder, more aggressive voices, and as a direct consequence, the once united kingdom is irrevocably torn in two. The deceptive logic of pride often feels undeniably smart and advantageous in the moment. It almost invariably does. Human wisdom excels at accurately predicting outcomes that we have already observed or experienced. However, it proves remarkably weak and inadequate when it comes to discerning the subtle, yet profound, actions God is orchestrating in the present moment. At this initial level, we typically approach life with the meticulous, calculating mindset of a spreadsheet analyst. We prioritize asking what is efficient rather than what is eternal. We inquire what will undoubtedly win the argument, not what will authentically heal the fractured relationship. We ask what will most effectively preserve our public image, rather than what will genuinely grow and refine our character. We tend to measure our success predominantly by speed, by sheer size, and by the volume of applause we receive. And because the world frequently rewards such a pragmatic and results-oriented mindset, we often erroneously assume that God operates under the same principles. But the cross, that ultimate symbol of sacrifice, teaches a fundamentally different arithmetic. Heaven often labels as loss what the earth perceives as gain, and conversely, it recognizes as gain what the world dismisses as loss. The path that appears most sensible and logical on the surface may, in fact, be the very path that diminishes you internally, making you smaller in spirit. Human wisdom also has a troubling propensity to shrink God, attempting to force him to fit neatly within our preconceived conclusions. We may pray, but often only for confirmation of decisions we have already made. We read Scripture, but frequently only to reinforce a preference we have already chosen. We quote verses like catchy slogans, then conveniently use them to defend our own impatience, our need for control, and our underlying fears. When God delays, we impatiently grab the steering wheel of our lives. When God is silent, we hastily fill that silence with our own distracting noise. Human wisdom, by its very nature, cannot tolerate mystery. So, it invariably attempts to transform mystery into a manageable project. Another telling sign of this level of wisdom is how we interact with those who hold differing opinions. When pure logic governs the heart, every conversation subtly morphs into a competitive contest. We listen with the intent to formulate a reply, not with a genuine desire to understand. We surreptitiously carry invisible scorecards, meticulously tracking perceived wins and losses. We demand that others conform to our pace and perspectives, or we swiftly label them as frustrating obstacles. Yet, the wisest person who ever walked the earth, Jesus, never once hurried anyone into healing or understanding. Jesus could have effortlessly won every single debate, every theological argument presented to him. Instead, he deliberately chose to win people. Human wisdom asks, what argument will logically prevail? Divine wisdom, conversely, asks, what will genuine love truly look like in this situation? But we are not at that elevated stage yet. Here, at the human wisdom level, we still instinctively reach for what feels smart, what feels quick, and what feels safe. So what does growth within this initial level of understanding actually look like? First, it demands honesty. Humbly admit that your very best reasoning, your most carefully constructed plans, have at times led you straight into metaphorical walls. Reflect on choices that initially appeared brilliant and foolproof, but later shattered something vital within you. Not to shame yourself, but simply to confront the truth. Truth is the essential doorway to genuine wisdom. Second, it requires humility. Begin each new day with a simple, yet profound, confession. Father, my perspective is inherently small and limited. Please teach me to see what I cannot yet perceive. That prayer is not a sign of weakness. It is, in fact, an act of powerful alignment. It gracefully moves you from a posture of self-reliance to one of profound God-awareness. Third, embrace slowness. Wisdom often discreetly hides in the careful second look and in the thoughtful second question. Ask yourself, what is the long obedience truly calling for here? What decision or action will genuinely honor Christ 5 years from now, not just 5 minutes from now? If you are leading a team, diligently parenting a child, or skillfully navigating a complex conflict, actively practice this small, yet transformative, shift. Do not ask only, what will merely solve the immediate problem? Instead, ask, what will effectively shape the person involved? Problems are transient, they come and go. People, however, are eternal. Human wisdom focuses on fixing immediate issues. God's wisdom is always focused on forming character. The former may temporarily calm a tense room. The The latter profoundly changes the very essence of the room. Finally, always remember this crucial point. God is not at all angry that you commence your journey here, at the foundational level of human wisdom. He thoughtfully endowed you with a discerning mind, with established patterns to follow, with insightful mentors, and with valuable skills. Use them wisely, steward them responsibly, but always hold them openly in your hands, ready to release them. For there will be specific seasons in life when the most straightforward, logical line is not, in fact, the faithful road. There will be divine instructions that appear far too simple to matter and far too quiet to even notice. There will be moments when your carefully constructed map simply runs out, and only the shepherd himself knows the next step forward. When that profound moment inevitably arrives, what has previously been useful and sufficient will then become inadequate, not because it was inherently wrong, but precisely because God is graciously inviting you higher, to a deeper level of understanding. Human wisdom represents level 1. It is the welcoming porch of the house, not the intimate living room. It is the practical toolbox, not the comprehensive blueprint for construction. Honor it, certainly, but do not ever worship it. Learn diligently from it, but do not dare to limit God to its confines. If you sense that your smartest, most clever plans have not ultimately produced the deep peace you so earnestly hoped for, take heart. You are, in fact, far closer to real, transformative wisdom than you might possibly imagine. God frequently allows our human cleverness to reach its absolute ceiling. Precisely so our eyes will finally lift upward. And when they do, you will joyfully discover that the next profound lessons of wisdom are not about thinking harder or more complexly, but about seeing truer and more clearly. Part 2. Spiritual Wisdom, Seeing Through Revelation. Every sincere believer eventually reaches a critical juncture where pure human logic simply ceases to function. You meticulously did what seemed unquestionably right. You diligently followed every rule, yet nothing quite fits into place anymore. This is the very threshold of spiritual wisdom, the transformative moment when human reasoning humbly bows and divine revelation graciously begins. God does not seek to destroy logic. Rather, he expansively broadens it until it can no longer contain his boundless nature. At this profound stage, he commences training your spiritual eyes to perceive beyond mere patterns, beyond superficial fairness, and beyond your desperate need for control. What once made perfect sense now seemingly breaks apart, not to intentionally confuse you, but to clear away the pervasive fog so that you can finally see with unhindered clarity. Daniel, the biblical prophet, lived at this advanced level. He was young, exiled, and completely enveloped by the arrogant pride of human intellect in Babylon, a city teeming with renowned scholars, brilliant scientists, and powerful magicians. These were men who could explain nearly everything in the physical realm, but discern absolutely nothing of spiritual significance. When the king issued an impossible demand, they panicked in fear. Daniel, however, did not. He turned directly to prayer, not to human reason. His profound wisdom did not stem from reading more books. It arose from a deep, abiding stillness before God. And when God graciously revealed the king's dream, Daniel humbly declared, "No wise men, enchanters, magicians, or diviners can explain to the king the mystery about which he asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries." That, precisely, is spiritual wisdom, seeing not primarily through past experience, but through the illuminating power of the Holy Spirit. This profound kind of wisdom blossoms and grows in the fertile soil of silence. When God intentionally hides specific details from us, he is not cruelly withholding help. Rather, he is diligently training your spirit to hear what physical ears cannot possibly perceive. Revelation is not merely a sudden, fleeting flash of insight. It is a gradual, deliberate unveiling that absolutely demands profound humility. The Spirit does not shout over our incessant thoughts. He gently whispers beneath them, an almost imperceptible nudge. You learn to perceive him through an unexplainable peace, through a deep, unwavering conviction, and through the strange, harmonious alignment of events that you simply cannot rationalize. The logical mind often says, "This makes absolutely no sense." Yet the spirit, guided by faith, responds, "But this is the way." Many sincere believers unfortunately never cross this pivotal threshold because it unequivocally demands radical surrender. Human wisdom stubbornly desires to remain in charge, craving complete clarity before it will offer obedience, and demanding irrefutable proof before it will extend trust. Spiritual wisdom, conversely, reverses that order entirely. You obey before you fully understand. You bravely move forward before you can clearly see the entire road ahead. You forgive before the apology is ever offered. You give generously before the outcome is known. It is a kind of seeing that materializes only after you have truly let go of your grip. You begin to realize that genuine understanding reliably follows obedience, not the other way around. Spiritual wisdom also fundamentally transforms how you interpret suffering. The natural mind instinctively asks, "Why would God permit this to happen?" The spirit, however, asks, "What is God graciously revealing through this experience?" Pain, in this elevated perspective, becomes a clarifying lens, not an impenetrable wall. Joseph's brothers intended to cause him great harm, but heaven orchestrated it for healing and restoration. Job lost everything he possessed, yet gained a profound insight into the unwavering sovereignty of God. The Apostle Paul even referred to his imprisonment as a place where the gospel could run freely. That is revelation. You cease measuring events solely by personal comfort and instead begin measuring them by their transformative power. At this level, the very nature of prayer changes its shape. You no longer pray only for specific answers. You now pray profoundly for alignment with God's will. You begin to articulate, "Lord, don't just show me what to do, but teach me how to truly see." Revelation is not primarily about accurately predicting the future. It is about acutely perceiving God's subtle, yet undeniable, fingerprints in the present moment. The Spirit begins to impart subtle, nuanced lessons: how to interpret silence, how to truly feel divine conviction, how to recognize the gentle nudges that consistently pull you toward peace. The voice of God becomes less about sheer volume and more about profound recognition and intimacy. The primary challenge here lies in discernment. Not every idea that feels spiritual originates from God. The enemy himself frequently disguises himself as an angel of light, offering seductive shortcuts that sound holy but ultimately feed pride. Spiritual wisdom rigorously tests every voice by its observable fruit. If the ultimate outcome leads to humility, to genuine forgiveness, and to profound love, then it is truly of God. If, however, it leads to a sense of urgency, to paralyzing fear, or to self-glorification, then it is unequivocally not. Revelation invariably carries with it a deep, abiding peace. Even when it cuts profoundly deep, God's illuminating light may expose hidden truths, but it never humiliates. It convicts with the express purpose of healing, never to shame. You will recognize your growth in this spiritual wisdom when you begin to rest more and react less impulsively. You no longer rush into decisions out of fear or anxiety. Instead, you consciously take time to listen intently, and the Holy Spirit begins to intricately weave patience into the very fabric of your thoughts. You start to discern profound meaning in delays, valuable lessons embedded in conflicts, and divine purpose even in profound loss. It's not that you cease to think. It's that your thinking now humbly bows to the sovereign guidance of the Spirit. God trains us at this level through calculated contradiction. He permits His promises and our present reality to collide. He allows your meticulously crafted plans to succeed outwardly, yet paradoxically fail inwardly, specifically so you will earnestly search for His voice once again. He permits the answers you once trusted implicitly to dry up, until you discover that true revelation is not a sudden lightning bolt, but a continuous, intimate relationship. Spiritual wisdom blossoms in the fertile soil of confusion, nurtured and watered by a spirit of surrender. When you cease demanding control, genuine understanding begins to bloom. If you currently feel as though God has gone quiet, do not panic or despair. Silence is often the most profound classroom of revelation. The Holy Spirit is not absent. He is diligently refining your spiritual sight. The more you learn to trust His gentle whispers, the clearer everything in your life becomes. What once appeared random and chaotic now looks intricately designed. What once felt cruel and unjust now feels profoundly purposeful. You begin to intuitively sense that absolutely nothing is wasted, not even the agonizing waiting. And that profound realization is not something taught by human logic. It is born solely of divine revelation. Spiritual wisdom is level 2. It commences precisely when human reasoning reaches its end, and the Spirit of God takes up the pen to write upon your heart. Here, you no longer live solely by human explanations, but by intimate communion with the divine. The eyes of your heart gradually begin to open, and slowly, you start to perceive the world not merely as it outwardly appears, but as it truly is in God's eternal perspective. Part 3. Divine Wisdom, Seeing Through God's Heart. There exists a singular kind of wisdom that no amount of human experience, diligent study, or even miraculous intervention can produce. It is not acquired through mere lessons, but is profoundly born through deep, personal transformation. It is that transcendent moment when you no longer just seek to understand God, but rather to authentically carry His very heart. This is divine wisdom, the highest and most profound level, where spiritual sight seamlessly transforms into unconditional love. You cease asking what is right, and instead begin to ask, with profound sincerity, what truly reflects the heart of Christ in this situation. Jesus perfectly exemplified this divine wisdom in every single moment of His earthly life. When the crowd, seething with self-righteousness, brought Him the woman caught in adultery, their primary intent was to elicit a legalistic answer. The Mosaic law was unequivocally clear. She deserved death by stoning. The trap they set was cunningly clever. Either condemn her and consequently lose His burgeoning reputation for mercy and compassion, or forgive her and ostensibly break the divine law. But divine wisdom never forces a choice between truth and love. Rather, it perfectly fulfills both in harmonious synergy. Jesus stooped down, wrote mysteriously on the ground, and then uttered the unforgettable words, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her." In that single, potent sentence, He brilliantly exposed their rampant hypocrisy, meticulously protected her inherent human dignity, and profoundly revealed God's boundless compassion. No lengthy argument, no elaborate defense. Only the pure wisdom that pierces through surface behavior to see the heart behind the action. Divine wisdom does not merely react, it profoundly redeems. It sees far deeper than outward behavior, understanding intuitively that anger may often conceal a deep-seated fear, that pride may desperately cover profound pain, and that rebellion might, in fact, be a desperate cry for healing. When this elevated wisdom begins to flourish within you, you fundamentally start to see people in an entirely new light. You cease labeling them and instead begin fervently interceding for them. You come to the startling realization that the person who deeply wounded you may not primarily need punishment as much as they desperately need mercy. You begin to look at them through the same patient, loving eyes with which God once looked at you, with a patience that defies all human logic and a love that comes at an immeasurable cost. At this most profound level, you also begin to perceive your own life in a drastically altered way. What once felt like irreparable loss now appears as purposeful pruning. What once felt like frustrating delay now looks like intentional divine design. Divine wisdom completely rewrites your previous definitions of success and failure. True success becomes unwavering obedience, even when absolutely no one else notices. Failure transforms into the invaluable lesson that draws you nearer to God's boundless grace. You stop asking God to remove difficult people from your life, and instead begin asking Him to transform you into someone who can genuinely love them well. That, truly, is the beautiful fruit of seeing through His heart. This most profound kind of wisdom cannot possibly reside within a proud, self-important spirit. It grows exclusively in the fertile, surrendered soil of a humble heart. Pride relentlessly desires to be right. Love yearns to be like Christ. Pride desperately wants to win an argument. Love tirelessly strives to restore a broken relationship. The more intimately you come to know God, the more you will profoundly realize that His greatest victories never, from a worldly perspective, look like victories at all. The cross, to human eyes, appeared to be an utter defeat, but it was, in reality, the supreme wisdom of heaven miraculously undoing the curse of sin. The world perceived weakness, God saw salvation. That is divine sight, perceiving unparalleled glory where others see only ruin and despair. Divine wisdom also fundamentally transforms how you utilize your words. Instead of speaking primarily to impress others, you begin to speak with the sole intention of healing. Instead of correcting someone to merely prove your own point, you correct with the profound goal of restoring them. You become inherently slow to speak, exquisitely quick to listen, and extraordinarily careful with the precious commodity of truth. Because truth, when delivered without love, wounds deeply, but love, when devoid of truth, dangerously weakens. Divine wisdom skillfully holds both in perfect balance, strong enough to confront necessary truths, yet gentle enough to offer profound comfort. You will find yourself saying less, but meaning significantly more. The palpable presence of God within your spirit begins to speak louder and more powerfully than your own voice ever could. This highest level of wisdom ushers in an unparalleled peace, not the shallow peace that depends on superficial agreement, but the deep, abiding peace that remains steadfast even when others profoundly misunderstand you. You cease needing to win every argument because you intimately know that God sees the true condition of the heart. You stop being easily shaken by betrayal because you inherently know that God meticulously works through even the most painful circumstances. You stop measuring your intrinsic value by the fleeting applause of others because you have learned that the approval which matters most cannot ever be taken away. You begin to see absolutely everything through the lens of eternity, and eternity, in turn, changes absolutely everything. But reaching this elevated level is not a mere achievement. It is a profound and ongoing surrender. God cannot fully trust us with His divine sight until He can unequivocally trust us with His boundless compassion. He trains us meticulously through heartbreak that shatters our expectations, through misunderstandings that test our patience, and through acts of forgiveness that feel inherently unfair. Every single time you choose mercy over revenge, patience over pride, you are actively learning to see like Him. Divine wisdom is not a coveted reward for the cleverest among us. It is the sacred inheritance of the humble. When Solomon first prayed and asked for wisdom, his primary desire was to govern his burgeoning nation effectively. But in his later years, after experiencing immense wealth, numerous failures, and deep regrets, he penned the poignant words, "Everything is meaningless apart from fearing God and keeping His commandments." That was not an expression of despair. It was a moment of profound divine clarity. He finally perceived that life makes genuine sense only when viewed through God's loving heart, not through man's fleeting ambition. Divine wisdom begins precisely where self-importance conclusively ends. So, if you are weary from tirelessly trying to understand every single detail of life, then simply rest. You were never intended to master life itself, but rather to humbly mirror the one who generously gives it. Divine wisdom is not ultimately about knowing more facts. It is profoundly about becoming more like Christ. And when you finally reach that transformative point, you no longer merely live for answers. You live profoundly from His boundless love. You begin to truly see what He sees, to deeply feel what He feels, and to act with the quiet, unwavering strength of heaven itself. That is when wisdom ceases to be a mere pursuit and miraculously becomes your very nature. Part 4. How God trains you to see like Him. God's intricate training is never random or arbitrary. Every period of silence, every significant delay, every seemingly closed door carries a profound, divine purpose. From an external, human perspective, it often appears as though life is catastrophically falling apart. From heaven's elevated view, however, it is meticulously designed as a rigorous classroom. Genuine wisdom does not arrive through comfort or ease. It profoundly grows through divine correction, through patient waiting, and through complete surrender. God is not simply trying to make you smarter or more intellectually sharp. He is meticulously shaping how you see. Before He can truly trust you with His divine sight, He must first purify your perspective. The first significant way God trains you is through the experience of misunderstanding. He permits people to judge you wrongly, to maliciously twist your motives, or to completely forget your diligent efforts. It feels inherently unfair and unjust. But that, precisely, is how He teaches you to look beyond superficial appearances. He is training you to perceive the unseen spiritual battle, to understand that hurt people often, inadvertently, hurt others. That silence sometimes deceptively hides deep-seated fear. That criticism often originates from profound insecurity. When you genuinely begin to see through this lens, compassion effortlessly replaces anger. You stop impulsively reacting and begin earnestly interceding. You no longer perceive enemies. You see only souls desperately in need of grace. That, unequivocally, is not weakness, it is profound maturity. The second way is through loss. God strategically removes what you have come to depend on, not to punish you, but to decisively shift your primary focus. When carefully laid plans fail and cherished people depart, your eyes naturally turn upward, toward heaven. You begin to see, with undeniable clarity, that He alone is truly enough. Human wisdom instinctively asks, "Why did this happen to me?" Divine training, however, prompts you to ask, "What is this experience graciously revealing to me?" Every loss carries a specific message. Sometimes God must literally empty your hands so that He can ultimately fill your heart with something far greater. You cannot grasp revelation with a clenched, controlling fist. The very moment you release your desperate grip on control, your spiritual sight begins to clear. The third way God trains you is through silence. There are specific seasons when heaven seems completely quiet. No dramatic signs, no explicit confirmations, no new, clear instructions. This is not abandonment. It is purposeful adjustment. God is diligently teaching you to recognize His constant presence without the need for continuous, tangible proof. He is forming a deep wisdom within you that listens profoundly deeper than mere words. When you learn to implicitly trust Him in moments of silence, you cease chasing external noise and distractions. You begin to hear the still, small voice, gently guiding you. Silence is not the absence of God. It is the audible sound of His profound patience, diligently forming endurance within your spirit. He also trains through waiting. Waiting is never wasted time. It is, in fact, transformation in slow motion. When God delays, He is actively developing the crucial depth you will undeniably need to sustain the blessing He intends to bestow. The impatient heart desperately craves immediate results. The wise heart, conversely, yearns for readiness. Many individuals unfortunately collapse under the immense weight of blessings they were never truly prepared to carry. So God allows waiting to stretch your faith, to lengthen your patience, and to deepen your gratitude. Waiting shifts you from merely asking for something to ultimately becoming someone who can responsibly carry what you once earnestly prayed for. Sometimes God's training feels like a perplexing contradiction. He calls you to love people who do not reciprocate that love, to serve quietly when you deeply crave recognition, to forgive when the wound is still agonizingly fresh. Each such test meticulously trains your spiritual vision. You begin to perceive how his strength is made perfect precisely in your weakness, how his divine purpose can miraculously flow even through profound pain. When you respond with genuine humility, you begin to discern intricate patterns. The very things that hurt you most deeply often become the precise tools God uses to heal others through you. This transformative process never concludes quickly. God often repeats lessons until they become ingrained, shaping your spiritual reflexes. You might believe you have mastered patience, then face another unexpected delay. You might believe you have learned profound forgiveness, then encounter an even deeper betrayal. Do not be discouraged or disheartened. God trains through repetition precisely because he desires the lesson to become an intrinsic instinct within you. He is not testing you to make you fail. He is meticulously training you to form you into his likeness. Every hardship is a hidden rehearsal for greater spiritual sight. If you currently find yourself in the midst of confusion, remember this profound truth. God is not only working around you, he is diligently working within you. What appears to be delay is actually divine discipline. What feels like silence is purposeful shaping. The moments that sting the most are often the very ones that sharpen your spiritual eyesight most acutely. Every misunderstanding is teaching you to look through the lens of mercy. Every unanswered prayer is teaching you to depend implicitly on his peace. Every closed door is gently guiding you toward deeper alignment with his will. God's training has one overarching goal: to help you see precisely like him, to perceive the profound hurt behind the harsh exterior, the divine purpose behind the pain, and the unwavering promise behind the lengthy process. And as your vision profoundly changes, so too does your heart. You cease fighting for control and instead begin flowing gracefully with his divine leading. You ultimately realize that true wisdom is not about understanding everything perfectly, but about implicitly trusting the one who does. When that profound truth settles deeply within your being, you can finally truly rest, even in the middle of lessons that are still beautifully unfolding. Part 5. Living at the highest level of wisdom. When you genuinely reach the highest level of wisdom, you begin to navigate life with an entirely different demeanor and perspective. You no longer feel compelled to rush to prove yourself, to desperately defend your inherent worth, or to win every single debate. You have learned, through experience and revelation, that profound peace is infinitely stronger than pride, and that genuine humility sees far more clearly than even the most brilliant intellect. This elevated level of wisdom is not loud or boisterous. It is inherently calm, steadfast, and quietly powerful. It no longer fights relentlessly to be right. It simply, serenely reflects what is true. Individuals operating at this level do not depend on constant external confirmation or validation. They do not require immediate visible results to implicitly believe that God is actively working. Their faith has cultivated roots so incredibly deep that even the fiercest storms of life no longer shake them from their foundation. They live from a profound place of unwavering trust, not from a constant state of tension or anxiety. They intimately know that even when life makes absolutely no logical sense, God never wastes any pain. Every minute detail, every significant delay, every unexpected detour becomes an integral part of a larger, divine pattern. They cease trying to meticulously interpret God's every move and simply choose to stay intimately near his heart. Living in divine wisdom means you fundamentally stop separating the spiritual aspects of life from the ordinary. You discover God's presence in the smallest, most unassuming things: a heartfelt conversation, a breathtaking sunrise, a quiet moment of forgiveness. You recognize that the holiest places and experiences are often subtly hidden in the simplest, most mundane moments. You stop anxiously waiting for grand, dramatic signs because you have cultivated the ability to notice God's gentle presence and work in the exquisite details. The more your spiritual eyes open, the more you realize that true wisdom was never about knowing esoteric secrets, but about seeing clearly what was authentically there all along. At this level, Profound obedience becomes natural, not a chore. You no longer obey because you fear consequences or because you are chasing blessings. Instead, your heart and His will have finally become one. You begin to sense His leading as naturally as the rhythm of your own breath. Quiet, constant, and profoundly gentle. As this alignment takes hold, you find yourself forgiving faster, loving deeper, and complaining far less. You learn the art of speaking life and hope even when those around you speak only of doubt. You carry a tangible peace into rooms that used to exhaust you. This is how divine wisdom truly lives, not in the eloquence of words, but in the weight of your presence. One undeniable mark of this wisdom is gratitude. When you finally perceive how perfectly God has woven the tapestry of your story, even the painful chapters begin to make sense. You look back and find yourself thanking Him for the doors He firmly closed, for the prayers He answered with a no, and for the seasons that broke you only to rebuild you into something far more resilient. Gratitude serves as the guardian of your soul. It keeps your heart soft, your vision clear, and your spirit light. It serves as a daily reminder that wisdom is not a final destination, but a way of seeing. King Solomon's prayer captures the very essence of this level of maturity. He did not ask for vast wealth or worldly power. Instead, he asked for a discerning heart to govern the people and the ability to distinguish between right and wrong. Solomon understood that true wisdom is not about gaining control, but about gaining compassion. When you carry that compassion, you begin to resemble the one who bestowed it upon you. You become less reactive and more reflective. You stop chasing the spotlight of recognition and start creating restoration wherever your journey takes you. This kind of wisdom transforms you, making your presence feel safe to those around you. People sense peace in your company rather than pressure. They trust your words because they can feel the divine gentleness backing them up. You no longer feel the internal need to win every argument. You simply feel the need to love well. You do not live to impress others. You live to bless them. Your wisdom is no longer measured by what you say, but by how people feel after they leave your presence. Calmer, lighter, and a little closer to God. However, living at this level does not mean the learning stops. It means you have finally learned how to keep learning without the paralyzing fear of being wrong. You remain teachable, staying soft before God, open to correction, and eager for further growth. You realize that wisdom does not make you superior to others. It makes you more dependent on Him. The wiser you become, the more acutely aware you are of how much you still need His guidance. That humble dependence is the true crown of wisdom. If you have ever wondered what it looks like to truly see through the eyes of God, it looks like this: to walk through life without a trace of bitterness, to love the very people who once hurt you, to find rest even when you don't understand the why, to discover beauty where others see only brokenness. This is the ultimate freedom that divine wisdom provides. It doesn't lift you above the struggles of life. It allows you to walk through them with an unshakable grace. And that is exactly where God has been leading you all along, moving you through the logic of the mind, through the revelation of the Spirit, and finally into the sight of His own heart. When you live here, you stop chasing wisdom as an achievement and start carrying it as an atmosphere. It becomes your identity, gentle, discerning, and full of peace. In every situation, your response quietly declares, "This is what it means to see through the eyes of God." Wisdom is not a ladder to be climbed. It is a journey of becoming. We begin by seeing through the lens of human reason. Then we learn to see through spiritual revelation. And finally, we see through the heart of God. Each level is not a destination to boast about, but a new depth of soul to grow into. Human wisdom teaches us how to think. Spiritual wisdom teaches us how to listen. Divine wisdom teaches us how to love. And the more we love, the clearer everything becomes. If you look back over the trajectory of your life, you will see it clearly, how God has been training your sight all along. You will see the disappointments that humbled you, the waiting seasons that refined you, and the difficult acts of forgiveness that stretched you. None of it was wasted. Those were not random hardships. They were curated lessons in divine perspective. Every time you chose grace over bitterness, patience over pride, or mercy over judgment, your eyes opened just a little more. Wisdom does not necessarily make life easier, but it makes it infinitely clearer. It helps you identify God's fingerprints on things that once looked meaningless. It allows you to find peace in moments where you used to panic. It gives you vision even when the answers are still far away. When you begin to see like God, you stop asking Him to change everything around you and start asking Him to change everything within you. The highest form of wisdom is to walk in love, to see people not as problems to be solved, but as promises to be kept, not as threats, but as souls worth redeeming. To look at the world through the same lens of compassion that once looked at you. That is what it means to carry the mind of Christ, to see truth and mercy holding hands in every situation. So, wherever you find yourself on this journey, stay teachable. Let every season soften your heart rather than harden it. Keep your eyes open for God in the most unexpected places. And when life feels unclear, remember this. He is not only giving you wisdom, He is giving you His vision. Make it your daily prayer. Lord, open my eyes to see as you see. Once you begin to see that way, you will realize that wisdom was never far away. It was God, patiently shaping your sight until your heart finally began to reflect His own.